Joining us today on Breaking Points is Vani Hari, perhaps better known as the Food Babe. She is a New York Times bestselling author, a blogger, entrepreneur, and a leading voice in food activism, known for her relentless efforts to expose the hidden toxic ingredients in our food and push for greater transparency in the food industry. Vani, thank you for coming on the show.
I'm so glad to be here with you, James.
Yeah, I want to start first with the rally that you organized last month at the headquarters of Kellogg's in protest of artificial food dyes, preservatives in cereal, calling for a full boycott of Kellogg's until they remove the food dyes from their products. And then for me, I've personally done a lot of research on ingredients in our food that are questionable, as well as the absence of other nutrients like fiber, which they strip out of the food to make it less filling so people buy and eat more. So I'm wondering, first off, what made you focus on food dyes in particular?
Yeah, so let's just back up a second and talk about how this even came about. In 2019, I was going down the grocery aisle with my 2-year-old at the time, and in 2015, Kellogg said that they would remove artificial food dyes and BHT from their cereals by 2018. And in 2017, I got pregnant, had a baby. No one's really holding the food companies accountable. It's been the wild, wild west for year after year after year. The FDA doesn't have the capability to do the work that really needs to be done when it comes to keeping these chemicals out of our food supply. So enter activists like me who really pay attention to these chemicals in our food and had petitioned Kellogg's at one point to remove BHT from their cereals, which they said they would do. And so I got pregnant, had a baby. I had a 2-year-old, and I'm going down the aisle and I see Baby Shark cereal. And actually, it was my 2-year-old that caught her eye first. And she goes, "Mom, Baby Shark." And I was like, "Oh, it's Kellogg's. They must have already removed the dyes. Let's look at the ingredients." And I was shocked. There were dyes, they were BHT, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait a minute, it's 2019. This is not, it's been a year after they said they would remove all these chemicals. And so I started a petition taking on Kellogg's to hold them accountable for this commitment. And we got a quick 50,000 signatures on the petition. It was amazing. I was set to deliver those petitions, and then the pandemic happened. So everything's shut down. There's no public events. We're not traveling. Everyone's scared out of their mind. People are going berserk. Everything is happening during that time where we just, we cannot do like a major campaign to take this on in a in-person fashion at that time. So things got busy. I got pregnant again. And this was an issue that was always on the back burner and on my mind. And it wasn't until it got really heated up until this year when I got invited to a Senate roundtable by Senator Ron Johnson. And at first, when Callie Means asked me to be part of this, at first I wanted to say no. I wasn't sure. I didn't know what I was going to actually testify on. But this was an issue that has been ongoing for so long, and nobody in Washington was holding Kellogg's accountable. And I said, you know what? This is my opportunity to actually talk about this issue in a big way in front of the leaders in Washington and let them know that these companies are getting away with all of this, right? And so I made my entire testimony about this issue that I've been working on since I started as a food activist, which is American companies using one set of ingredients here and another one in other countries, a safer, better version of their products for other countries, while they sell us the more toxic, poisonous ingredients here. And there was something that really struck me that day. Robert Kennedy Jr. was in the room, and he said, if another country was doing this to us, it would be considered an act of war. And it was that momentum that got the 300,000 plus signatures up until October 15th when we went to go deliver those petitions. And because of the momentum of that, we were able to get 1,000 people on the ground with us in Battle Creek, Michigan. It was the largest kind of food activist rally that I've ever seen in terms of on the ground in an obscure little town in Michigan, right? Really hard to get to. There's no direct flights. And people came from all over. They drove, they flew. It was it was breathtaking to me. And
Yeah,
that's
so
when we
I'm
started.
wondering, have you been in has Kellogg's been in touch with you since that event?
No, they have not. They had actually told their Kellogg's employees not to come in that day. So there was nobody coming in and out of the office. And I look up and I see a sign. Someone had rolled their whiteboard over that said, "Get off my lawn." So there was an executive in the building looking down at us, wrote that on his board, and showed it to all of the women and children and everyone else who had come out that day in Battle Creek. And it was, I just couldn't believe it. If they had just sat down, received the petitions, they don't have to say they're going to do anything, right? They just have to show us the respect. It wouldn't have escalated like it is now. It would have disarmed us in a way. We would have said, "Hey, they're listening. This is great. Thank you so much," right? But instead, it fired up the movement like never before. And I have never seen the onslaught that has occurred in the media when it comes to Kellogg's. And it's fired up our new Washington leadership now that President Trump has been elected and RFK has been nominated for HHS secretary. You know, the first thing out of the gate after the election, RFK is talking about Fruit Loops, right? That would have never occurred had Kellogg's just done the right thing. So this is a message for every single food company. You guys got to listen to us. We're real people. We're people who care about the health of Americans, and you cannot continue to poison Americans and with ingredients you don't use in other countries.
Yeah, I think that's a really compelling argument to make when you show the ingredient list side by side of the US version and maybe the UK version, Australia version. I think people see, hey, why is it different? And since you brought up the sort of the bigger picture, the movement, the Make America Healthy Again movement, you mentioned RFK Jr. And he's talked about all kinds of different things like cleaning house at various agencies like the FDA, CDC, NIH. He's talked about restoring transparency, putting an end to the revolving door, all this kind of stuff. And Trump, like you said, to his credit, he did he did make good on his promise and nominate Kennedy to lead Health and Human Services. But there has been, I'm sure you know, quite a large backlash to that nomination. People in the media and those in government calling RFK Jr. a quack, anti-vaxxer, a conspiracy theorist. So I'm just wondering what your take is on RFK Jr., since I think you know him probably personally and have seen his work through the years.
Well, I've only met him. I met him the night before the Senate hearing and then at the Senate hearing, so at the roundtable. So I don't really know him personally. But what I do know of him is what I've seen, and that's his track record. And when I was following the cases that he was trying against Monsanto, that is the work that I was really inspired by. He had to go at it like no one I'd ever seen before. And he exposed such wide ranging government collusion of the EPA and Monsanto in a way that it convinced jury to award their plaintiff $2.2 billion, right? The largest sum of money in any kind of case like that, and proving that glyphosate is causing cancer. And so he did something so heroic. And for the issues that I work on, which, you know, for years, I mean, I would think the first kind of big issue I got involved in my early activist careers was GMO labeling. Why here in the United States, we don't know whether we're eating genetically engineered ingredients, and so many other countries were labeling their products. I fought for that, right? I spent countless hours working on that campaign. I freaking used my delegate status at in the 2012 DNC to protest in front of the Secretary of Agriculture. So this was a very important topic to me in terms of like safeguarding ourselves against these chemicals that are being sprayed on, you know, 80% of our farmland. And so knowing that kind of work that he has done, I feel like he's one of the most qualified people to take down the things that he wants to take down, which is the FDA corruption, how 50%, close to 50, I think it's 48%, technically, 48% of funding for the FDA comes from industry, right? The fact that we have these chemicals that are being used in our food supply, where there's 10,000 chemicals here in the United States and only 400 for use in Europe. I mean, the fact that he wants to take on those issues, that's what I'm really excited about, because that's what's going to really change the landscape. And the third issue that I'm so excited about is getting pharmaceutical ads off television. If we can get the media to actually tell us the truth about health, we have the opportunity as Americans to know how to really take care of ourselves. Right now, all we're getting advertised for is go on this drug and go on that drug. No, I mean, during the pandemic, did you hear one government leader talk about how to improve immunity naturally? Never. It never happened, right? It was take this vaccine, take this, antiviral, take this or take that. There was no real world solutions for Americans to actually get healthy from within. And that's the kind of leadership I'm looking for. And that's the kind of truth that I want in our media, the truth that I want presented to the American public, because I was there, right? I was on 9 prescription drugs. I went to the bottom of my health before I figured out that I have to do something differently. I want to reach people before they get to that level, because I tell you, for most of my life, I felt like a zombie. I felt sick. I felt awful. And that's why I do this work.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I understand some of the criticisms, of RFK. But one thing that he does represent is that he probably represents the biggest threat to the money-making machine that is our health and pharmaceutical industrial complex, which is why I think he's getting so much pushback. People like me, I've gotten pushback from the establishment scientific community for simply pointing out, various funding sources and conflicts of interest. I know you've received some criticism as well through the years. I mean, you have to if you're taking on a machine like this. So I wanted to give you a chance to kind of address some of those criticisms. I saw that this was from a recent article put out by the American Council of Science and Health. And they have in their paper, or in their article, they said, quote, "The food babe is not a credible source of information on these topics at all. She makes millions of dollars creating fear that is based on nothing and sells supplements and products as her alternatives. Please consider seeking actual experts if you want to discuss these topics." So I just want to give you, so what is your response to that kind of criticism?
So I've written a whole book about this topic. It's called Feeding You Lies. And I was really naive when I became an activist. I thought if I just told the truth and I get these companies to change and they take out the chemicals, like everything's going to be all right. But there is a tremendous amount of money being lost as a result of taking these chemicals out of our food supply. And the food and chemical industry will hire what they call front groups. And the American Council for Science and Health is actually a great example of a front group that works for industry. They take money. I mean, this is shown in documentation in Freedom of Information Request Acts, from the great work of the U.S. Right to Know group, has shown in their documentation and their research how much money that they're taking. I mean, they've taken money from Kellogg's before. They're taking money from Johnson and Johnson. They're taking money from just about every big food corporation, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, et cetera, to defend the corporations in the public eye by using paid for science. Okay. And so this is a typical industry talking point. Unless you have an MD behind your name or some kind of credential like PhD, this is the first attack they always make. And you'll see this happen to RFK Jr. You'll see it happen to anyone out there that is a journalist or anyone who's just bringing this information about. I think it happens to you, James, where they say, you're not qualified to talk about this. Well, then who is qualified? The experts that got us into this mess? Who is qualified? The food scientists that make the chemicals for these corporations and have entered our food supply without any safety data? Like, who is the person that's going to guard the hen house, right? Is it the hen? So what we have to do here when we see these kind of attacks is number one, we call them out for what they are. It's an industry playbook tactic to take down the messenger. They'll do anything to character assassinate someone like myself. But as soon as you notice that they start to attack the messenger and not the message, they've lost. And so that's what's important. And I think Addison Whitcomb, said that in a quote, to give her credit for that quote. But that is the truth. When they attack the messenger and not the message, they have lost. And this is what you'll see again and again. And I see it all happening over media about the HHS secretary appointment of RFK Jr. And we need to look at what he's actually saying. We need to look at the meat of what he's proposing, and we need to debate that. And I'm happy to debate that any day of the week.
I mean, I think it's for me, it's like a different philosophy that he's talking about. I think we're all going to make errors, right? We learn something new, we change our mind. These kinds of things do happen. But I think nobody ever talks about sort of the times that the establishment medical community makes an error, such as through COVID or other drugs that they've approved that are very, very expensive and then don't end up working at all. There's no backlash to that kind of thing, which I find to be very odd. But I know we're running up on time here, so I wanted to give you an opportunity. I know you already have a really big platform online, in print. So where do you want to point people to if they're looking for more of your content?
Yeah, please come on over to foodbabe.com, sign up for my newsletter because that's where I share all this good information, and also just follow on social media, the Food Babe, everywhere. And it's really exciting times. There's a lot of momentum for this moment. I just want to end with this. I think Kellogg's is changing it from behind the scenes, but liably, they cannot have two different products on the shelf. So they're going to have to wait for all of that product to get off the shelves in the grocery store. And then I think we're going to have a big win. So I'm excited. And I'm just going to go ahead and make the prediction here. They're going to say it had nothing to do with our movement. They were doing this anyways. I just can't wait for that statement because it's going to be fun to call out.
Yeah, well, thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate the work that you do, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks. Bye.
If you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.